And you've been arguing today that David Cameron's demands from Europe are very modest, too modest. He should be asking for much more.
I think it's pretty clear that the list of negotiating aims has been drawn up not on the basis of what is the ideal relationship that Britain wants with the EU, but rather on the basis of being things that we know we can do. There's no chance of any of them being refused. Many of them can be done through domestic legislation.
So things like stopping benefits going to new migrants and that kind of thing.
That is something we could almost certainly do with domestic legislation. Doesn't require anyone else's permission, certainly doesn't require a treaty change, and therefore there's no chance of, if you like, being defeated on anything. And so I think this is all being done in order to be able to come back and claim victory, and we're missing a generational opportunity to get a different kind of relationship with the EU based on free trade rather than political amalgamation, which I think is what most of my constituents, supporters of all parties, say that they want.
Emily Thornberry, is that what you want? Basically a relationship with Europe that's about the single market and not about politics?
No, I don't. No. I think Daniel is just setting up... He's setting up hurdles that are so high that he knows that Cameron won't be able to get over them, and so he can go for what he really wants, which is for us to get out of the EU. I mean, that's what you want. Why not just say it? I mean, it seems to me that we should... It is definitely in our interest to remain within the EU, but it has to be a reformed EU.
But to do what? That's the question. I mean, you know, Juncker wants an ever more political union.
Yeah.
Is that what you want?
I think that we shouldn't just be going for an EU which is all about free trade. I think we need to have some basic rights across the whole of Europe so that we don't get people exploited, so that we have, you know, certain basic standards. I think that it has a social agenda as well as an economic agenda, and that's a good thing.
I mean, David Cameron and Jean-Claude Juncker are sitting down now. They're just sending us these pictures from Chequers. These two men who famously don't get on. Cameron tried to stop him becoming president, but now trying to make friends. I mean, Dan Hannan, I mean, you sound very confident that the British people agree with you, but isn't the truth that there are all sorts of things about Europe in terms of protections that people don't necessarily appreciate are part of being...
There are some people who definitely want to leave the EU. There are some people who agree with Juncker that we should be part of a kind of European country, a superstate, but the vast majority are in between those two positions, saying that we want open markets and cooperation and trade with our friends and allies on the continent, but we want to live under our own laws. Now, Jean-Claude Juncker has offered that. He's explicitly spoken about a specific deal for Britain. Angela Merkel, the same thing. And the Federalists have said that, you know, even Jacques Delors has come out and said we should have a kind of privileged partnership for Britain where you can be in the internal market, free movement of goods and services and capital, but outside the political union.
Who would lose out?
The problem is that we're not asking for it. It's not that it's being refused, it's that we're not asking for it.
I think the whole country would lose out because I think that most of our investment comes from Europe. I think most of our trade comes from Europe. And I think the insecurity... You see, it's all very well...
Why would that be affected, Emily? If we were completely in the single market, if we were just withdrawing from the political institutions, why would any of that be affected?
Well, for example, right, you would be able to exploit some workers and not others. We need to have some basic standards for, you know, for rights for part-time workers, for example, the right to be able to have time off for maternity leave or parental leave, so that you can't just go, you can't just run off to the bottom, so you can't just invest in a country where the workers have no rights at all.
You can argue
no, it's not. These are rights that come from Europe. These are rights that come from Europe, and that's why we should have a European Union which is about not only free market but also to ensure that we don't get...
If you want those rights, argue for them. Let people vote and let people decide democratically. Why do we have to contract it all out to Brussels?
Given Daniel is sort of pretty opposed to David Cameron's position because he thinks it's weak, are you effectively supporting David Cameron now against the right of the Conservative Party?
Well,
like
I know
Daniel?
that you'd like to have it in these kind of bald terms, but clearly it's more complicated than that. We are certainly, the Labour Party is certainly in favour of us remaining within Europe, but we think that there are certain things that should be reformed. And obviously such things as making sure that when new countries join Europe, there should be transitional arrangements in terms of people being able to move around at early stages. That's one of them. Another one is in order to be able to look closely at benefits so that people can't come here and claim benefits.
So you agree with all of these things? I mean, that's the point. So, I mean, now that Labour shifted its position on Europe, what is the difference between you and David Cameron?
We've not shifted our position on Europe.
Well, on the referendum.
Well, the referendum is going to come. So instead of spending our time on the media talking about whether or not there should be a referendum...
Yeah, what's the difference between you and David Cameron now on the referendum?
Well, I don't know what David Cameron's view is, to be honest. I mean, on one hand, he looks behind him in order to find out what his backbenchers are saying. He presumably is not trying to keep Daniel on board, but he's trying to keep a sufficient number of his backbenchers on board, and he's trying to sell it to the public, and he's trying to work out what he can negotiate. Now, our view
that isn't going to work, Emily. You can't make out that this is just some internal Tory row. The people who are going to decide this in the end...
Well, that's how it came about.
David Cameron will get one vote, I'll get one vote, you'll get one vote, you'll get one, Krishna, but it's the people as a whole who he needs to convince. It's not me. And I reckon, and this is on the basis of years of listening to people, of supporters of all parties, that if you can offer people free markets, cooperation, but not membership of a country called Europe, which insists on common policies in foreign policy, in employment, in defence, in criminal justice. If we can opt out of the political things, that is what most people say they want. Now, I would have liked to have done that through renegotiation. If we can't do it through renegotiation, we'll do it in the way that the Swiss do, by coming out and having
that we will have many times.
a free trade.
So I'm going to leave it there, but thank you both very much indeed for coming in.